Welcome to episode 45 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on October 29th, 2020. Today I have some updates on a few things before launching into an interview I did with Ella Gordon at Jamieson and Smith while I was in Shetland last month. She is quite the fascinating knitter, I must say. Let's get on with the show. This show is being recorded before I pick the prizes for the Halloween knit-along, but it will be released after the prizes have been announced. So rather than congratulating the winners personally, I'll just say a general, well done, everybody. And really, I mean it. Whether you won a prize in the end or not, the projects people knit were fabulous, and I really enjoyed watching them come in. And thank you to my anonymous patron, Longan Lumos, and Poppy's Pom Pom, for contributing prizes. I did just pick the winners of the Shetland Wool Adventures Journal today before I started recording, so I can say congratulations to Yarn Addict, Sue and Carlock, Red's Flippin' Out, I love that username, Knit and Kim, and Food Family Fiber Farming. Remember that you can still get a paper or a digital copy of the journal at shetlandwooladventures.com, and many thanks to Misha for her generous giveaway. A reminder that if you wanted to enter the giveaway from Fairmont Fibers of 3 mini skeins of their Manos de Uruguay Allegria Grande, that will be wrapping up soon over on the I Thought I Knew How Instagram feed, so hop over there and get your entry in. I thought that this was going to be my first episode back to not have a giveaway, but listener Julie swooped in just in time and offered a pretty awesome giveaway for 2 listeners. Julie is the owner of Jules Makes, which has a physical location in Belfast, Maine, where she offers all sorts of classes for sewing and fiber arts, as well as sales of yarn and handmade items. She does have an online store, though, and currently in that online store are 2 different advent calendar products. One is a 12-day option with 12 packages, and the other is a 4-week option with 4 packages. With this giveaway, one person will win the 12-day option, and the other will win the 4-week option. So what are in these advents? Stitch markers. I already own some of Jules Makes stitch markers, and I quite like them, especially the ones that are wire circles with an accent bead on the circle itself. Very handy. People seem to think that I hate stitch markers now because of my commentary on them a few episodes back. I don't hate stitch markers. I disapprove of designers telling me to use them where I don't need them. But stitch markers definitely have their use, and if you're going to use them, you may as well have pretty ones. Depending on the prize, the 12-day box has 12 individual packages and 1 last day surprise, and the 4 weeks box has 4 individual packages and 1 last day surprise. Each individual package contains either a set of 6 handmade stitch markers or a handmade progress keeper. There will be extra little goodies in each box. The 12 days option is valued at over $100, but you can pick one up for $75. And the 4 weeks choice is valued at $40, but priced at $25. So if you'd like to pick up one for yourself or a crafty friend, you can hop over to julesmakes.com and order them there. If you'd like to enter to win one of them, visit the I Thought I Knew How Instagram feed and find the post for the giveaway there and follow the directions to enter. The giveaway will end November 7th at noon Eastern Time. I think I mentioned already, but just to reiterate, this giveaway is open to worldwide listeners. I have been super busy with the online International Fiber Festival preparations, but it's coming along well. We will be spending 8 days visiting the Midwest, Canadian prairies, Peru, Japan, Estonia, Germany, the Hebrides, and Portugal from November 9th through the 16th. There will be vendors from the various locations, classes related to the regions, afternoons spent learning about the history, culture, and environment of the area, an opportunity to make a dinner of regional foods, and an evening cultural event. The shopping lists for classes and the groceries are up on the website at oiff.familypodcasts.com. You can find them by clicking the link at the top of that page that says Start Here and then following the relevant links. You can also learn more about the event and vendors by following OI Fiber Festival on Instagram and joining the online International Fiber Festival groups on Facebook and Ravelry. Please do share the festival with your friends because friends don't let friends miss fiber festivals. And speaking of giveaways, the vendors have really stepped it up this time. There are 17 giveaways coming from the vendors in the Fiber Festival. So be sure that you are following OI Fiber Festival on Instagram to see those when they come out. Many thanks to Knit New Haven, a welcoming and well-stocked shop for fiber crafters in New Haven, Connecticut, and to Morehouse Farm, source of beautiful merino wool in over 100 different colorways, for sponsoring the podcast. And thank you to all my patrons for supporting the show as well, especially Karen, who is the latest patron to sign up to support the show over at patreon.com/IthoughtIKnewHow. The interview I'm going to share with you today was originally released on the Jamieson and Smith YouTube channel, and if you'd prefer to watch it, feel free to hop over to their account and watch it there instead. Their channel is full of great stuff from Virtual Wool Week, so be warned that you might end up stuck there for a few hours. I am bringing you the audio of the interview that I filmed in their new recording space above the shop. Many thanks to Jamieson and Smith for allowing me use of the space. There are 4 other interviews to come that were recorded in that space, but I will say that after this episode, I will likely not release another for 3 weeks because of the festival. I promise I will return. This first interview is with Ella Gordon, who actually works at Jamieson and Smith, and she designs knitwear, and she collects vintage knitwear, and she was a Shetland Wool Week patron, so we have a lot to talk about. I introduce her a bit more in the interview, so I'm just going to jump right in. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. I am Anne Frost, the host of the knitting podcast, I Thought I Knew How, and the Online International Fiber Festival, and I am here today at Jamieson and Smith in Shetland to speak with Ella Gordon, who is a designer and a former Shetland Wool Week patron and now works at Jamieson and Smith. So Ella, thank you for coming in and talking to me today.
Yeah, no problem.
So you have mentioned in other interviews that are out there that you didn't realize you were a crafty person until into your teen years. How did that realization happen for you?
I think I was always quite more arty, I would say, than creative. My dad's an artist, he's a cartoonist. And he used to do cartoons in the local paper and things like that. So I always would draw and stuff a lot when I was young and do other kind of crafts. But no, I was never around knitting or anything like that really. And I think that was in the 90s in Shetland. It was kind of a different time that, like I would say, knitting kind of went a little bit out of fashion. I mean, it was really nothing like what it is now. So we weren't really surrounded by it. So I think, yeah, when I finished at high school here, I decided to go and do the 1-year art and design course at Shetland College. And then it was kind of, I was in that, you did quite a lot of textiles in that course. And I was like, oh, this is what I quite like doing this. So I think that was kind of, how I came to it. But yeah, it was funny because, and then now I feel like I do know arty stuff and all like textiles, so it's funny. But.
So has your art experience helped you with your design work, do you think?
I don't know. I think I've kind of gotten that way. I think some people get where like I used to draw all the time and now I never do it. So I find it I hardly ever do all my kind of designy stuff. I do on the computer and I do charts and I do it that kind of way rather than, I do quite a lot of swatching, so I suppose that's maybe my kind of drawing side of it would be in that.
That's so interesting to me. I didn't realize that you were into art beforehand, drawing art.
Yeah.
But that makes sense to me now, thinking about the colors that you use in your patterns and how I think you have a gift really for combining colors. But now that makes sense to me.
And then I do it quite graphically. Like I'm not that subtle really with my colors. They're
very bold.
Yeah. And that doesn't. I'm kind of a bit like go big or go home kind of way with knitting and colors. And I think when you have like and the selection to choose from, it's like, yeah, just do it.
Yeah, but I mean, so many, and I would number myself among them, so many people are intimidated by the variety of colors that are available.
I think I don't, that part doesn't scare me at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't know as well as that's when I started working here, working with Sandra in the shop, she's quite the same, and she's very like, well, just try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't really matter.
You know, that is true. I think that so many times as knitters, we think about how much time goes into trying something.
Yeah.
And we catastrophize.
Yeah.
If it
well,
doesn't
that's
work.
like swatching. I mean, that's why, like, for Fair Isle, you would always swatch it.
Yeah.
Even if you're just doing a minimal, just a bare minimum swatch. And quite often, if I'm doing something like a yoke or something, I'll only swatch half of it and then take a picture of it and flip it.
Oh, interesting. On the computer?
Just on my phone, like on an app. Yeah,
okay.
just any like format that you can flip a picture and just do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Even
that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Like so sometimes before I finish the whole swatch, I'm just like, I don't know if this, and then I'll take a photo and then it's okay, so I'll keep going.
That's brilliant.
But then I think as well with jumper weight and things like that, it's tiny balls. It's like you can get quite a lot of colours. So I notice when you're working with like really expensive yarn or yarn that comes in much like bigger sizes, then that is intimidating. And you do think about the cost, I think, on that stage. I mean, with yarn that I have that's not Shetland or whatever, sometimes I'm like that as well. And then I'm used to having 90 colours to choose from, so when like it is hard. But then I think I'm still quite like, even on a limited palette, I can kind of usually find a way to work them together.
Yeah, and you know, we also like knitting, so it's not the end of the world.
Sometimes I don't. Like, I think I really am.
True confessions.
Yeah, I really am. Like, I want the finished thing, but I don't particularly enjoy doing it a lot of the time.
That is shocking.
I know. And sometimes I just, and I really do think that's what, like, I hate plain knitting. I just get so bored. And the only thing that keeps me going sometimes is doing fair, because I want to see the next bit and see the next bit and see the next bit. And even the same with, I don't do a lot of lace, but if I do lace, I usually like to do something with colours or things that's got different things happening as you go through to like get on to the next bit. Yeah,
I'll often get to the plain knitting of something and just set it aside for when like we're going to the movies or on a car ride or something like that, and then you have it for your
I really have to really force myself to do plain.
Yeah. This has all been fascinating so far. So was your course at the Shetland College, was that just a one-year course or was that an introductory course and then you went on?
So you did, it was a one-year NC course, is what they call National Certificate course, just a one-year art and design. And really it was because I didn't want to move away, like at the end of high school. And at that time I think like everybody was just expected. That was what you would do and that was what you wanted to do. And I was just like, I don't think I do. So I did that course and then they had the textiles course, and because I kind of enjoyed doing the textiles, I thought, well, I'll just start it. And they even had it was like you could do 2 years and then transfer into another 2 years at a different university if you wanted. Like they had kind of things with other universities because it is the University of the Highlands and Islands, so they have, in theory, it's one big university with different campuses. So that was kind of floated around. It was like I could do 2 years and then I could do 2 years somewhere else or whatever. But I ended up it was just a 3-year course, 3-year degree course. And I just did the 3 years and I started working here about near to the end, beginning of my beginning of my final year. And they were like, when you finish, you can come work full time. So I was just like, they were like, you could do another year, but by that stage I was like over education. I hated all the writing side of all of it. I was like very much a practical person, so I was like, no, get me out. Let's just get into work and it's fine. Yeah. And then, and I mean, I never did really, I did, so you would do things like you would do a unit on weaving every year, a unit on knitting, which was all machine knitting, there was no hand knitting.
Okay.
And then you would do like a surface effect, so that was like printing, screen printing, things like that, which I loved. I really enjoyed doing all that as well. But the knitting, I was just, I loved it. And yeah, so that was all machine knitting. And then when I started working here, that was really when I got interested in hand knitting. Before that, I wasn't really that interested. I think I had that idea that, well, you can do everything on a knitting machine, which you really can't.
Yeah.
There's so much you can't do. They are quite limited. I mean, you can get really fancy ones, and my one that I have is semi-fancy, and it hooks up to the computer, and I have designing it software, but that is really all I used that for, was making my crafty cushions. That was really the main thing I used it for, and I use it for knitting the plain bodies of yokes, and I just don't have that much time to work with that kind of side of it now, but yeah, so that... questions about the course.
So what were you exposed to while you were there in taking the course? Yeah,
so I mean, it's a really good course actually.
It sounds very well rounded.
Yeah, really well rounded, and at that time, now it's kind of slightly different, but we had really quite small class sizes as well. Like I think in my class there was 5 full-time students.
Oh wow.
And maybe 3 or 4 part-time students.
And was your class mostly made up of people who were from Shetland, or were people coming from?
People do come up for it, but the issue they have is finding accommodation and stuff. It's quite hard. But I think now it's slightly better. But the funny thing in my year was there was me and another girl who'd been on the NC course with me. She was the year below me at school. And I was like, 18, 19, and the other people were all mature students, so they were in their 40s and 50s. So I think that kind of gave us quite a good work ethic, because you were with people who were like obviously, I mean, in Scotland we don't pay fees, so I wasn't paying anything to do that course. But those people that were mature students usually were, because in Scotland you get so many years of free education.
So they were returning.
So they were very hardworking, which I think made us very hardworking, and we did Monday to Friday 9 till 4.
Wow.
It was a job. Yeah, like I can't relate to people my friends went to university and they had 3 lectures a week, or I was like, what's that? We were there working 9 till 4 every day, so it set me up as well for having a real job. That was what you were used to, was working.
So you came, as you said, you came out of university and you began working here.
I worked Saturdays for about the last half year of my course. Maybe I just got here on Saturdays, and how I kind of got a Saturday job was working here at Wool, second Wool.
So they brought you in as
just helping out, just doing things like winding up home tops and things like that. And then they were just like, "Yeah, you're interested in Saturday jobs?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was great. And also that as well, I think was quite good, because I'd be here on Saturdays on my own, because everybody else worked Monday to Friday. Sometimes in summer, the ones in the wool store, they work on Saturdays, but so I was in here on my own, and people were coming into the shop, and I was having to learn how to help people. So I was kind of thrown in the deep end, but I'm glad I was, because I think it made me quite good at helping people and problem solving, because I had nobody.
You had to solve it.
I had to solve it, and I was like, because I was not in that universe, in Shetland universe.
Yeah.
People ask me things, and I was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, because it's just things that the yarn used to come in hanks. And then there would be so many hanks to a head of yarn was however many hanks, and then everything used to be sold in ounces, and now it's sold in grams, and so you'd be people come in and their name for a colour isn't necessarily what. So there's just a lot of things that you kind of had to learn. Right.
So was learning to hand knit a defense, I have to learn how to.
Well, I think I was I need to know. Yeah, I need to know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So how did you go about learning to knit then, by hand?
Well, Sandra again, she was find something you want to make and just start with that, and just kind of start that way. Which I think is you get a lot of people. It's what's the first thing? What's an easy thing to start with? And I know what people mean when they say that, but I think you need to find something that you're oh my god, I need to make I want to make that. and then use that to learn, which is why I think hats and stuff is really good, woolly hats and all that, because you're learning all the different elements of Shetland knitting on a manageable scale.
Yes.
And then as well, people quite often are like, oh, make a scarf. No, never make a scarf, because you're never gonna finish it.
Yeah.
Even when you're knitting a cowl, you're knitting and you think, God, and then you hold it up, it goes halfway down your neck. Like you have to have something.
Yes.
And then things like fable headbands, I mean, things like that I think is great. Like small, manageable things that you can kind of get your head around it. And I mean, things like socks is too complicated, I think, unless you've done socks without fairy on them. I always think that's it.
Yeah. No, I think it's so interesting with the Shetland Wool week hats, because I think that as a group, they are an excellent way to learn fair isle. Like, you have ones that start very basic, you have ones that incorporate the traditional motifs, and then you have, ones, they build off one another. Not necessarily, you don't want to take them in the order of the years, but you can put them in the right order to really learn fair isle and get the whole education and not be bored by just knitting a garter stitch scarf.
No, they really encapsulate, I think, everything about Shetland and its knitting and what the people are like. There's the kind of different styles of way people do things.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about Jamieson and Smith for a while. Okay, so the first thing that I learned last year while I was here was that locally it is known as the Wool Brokers.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you will say Jamieson and Smith to a local friend, and you'll watch it like work in their mind, and they'll think, oh, she needs the Wool Brokers.
Yeah.
What is it about Jamieson and Smith that has that image so emblazoned or cemented in people's minds as the Wool Brokers?
I think it is because that side of our business is, well, A, how it started, and B, still the majority of what we do. So, every year we take in over 80% of Shetland's wool clip, and from between 600 and 700 crofters, so quite a lot. And that's what they're doing every day at the wool store, is hand sorting it, hand grading it, and putting it into all the different grades that you get, because you get different, the very fine to the kind of rougher, and by separating it out, because you can get different grades even within a fleece. So by them hand sorting it, they're taking out the rougher bits and putting it in that kind of way. So I think, so they started, so like in the kind of 1930s, that was kind of when it started as a wool brokerage kind of business. And John Smith, Jamieson and Smith, they were based in Berry Farm in Scala, and he would go around and buy wool, because there was a lot of people who did that in Shetland at that time. And then, it was in the 1950s, the kind of Jamieson and Smith came together and they kind of started as a business. And then into the 1960s was when they started making yarn. And that was just so people used to, so Hunters of Brora, which was a mill on mainland in Scotland, they would buy raw wool from Shetlanders. They would have it sent away, people would send it away, it would be made into yarn and come back, so you were getting your own yarn, your own wool sent away and come back. And they just kind of started, as they were starting to buy more and more wool here, people would do that instead. So they decided that they would start making yarn to kind of cut out the middleman, I suppose, so people could just come direct and buy it. And they started with, so my great uncle, Gibby, he was the manager here for like the whole time when Oliver started and all that kind of stuff. So he was the manager, and he decided they would start doing yarn, and it really came from that. And also because at that time there was, where we are in Lerwick, the whole kind of seafront was a lot of fishing stations. So there was herring fishing, that was quite big. Also, like my family, Jane M. Shearer, they were had a very big fishing station, like kind of where from the museum.
Okay.
That whole bit, that was where their fishing station was. But so they would get, there would be gutters that would come up from south. like yarmouth and places like that, other places that had a good fishing industry, they would kind of go around different places and work for a season. So they would come to Shetland and work, and they would kind of start, a lot of them would take up knitting because they were working with Shetlanders, and that's kind of what they would do when they were waiting for a fish to come in.
Yeah.
So when they left, that was why they started doing mail order yarn.
Oh,
people would go back to where they came from, and then they would want to get
yarn. The yarn.
So they started doing mail order.
Oh wow.
So that was in the 60s. So that was kind of, how it started. But yeah, so I think that is why we are just, well, and then of course the confusion with the names with Jamieson's. Mm-hmm. I think the wool brokers,
it's just easier.
Just easier, yeah.
It's just easier.
But that, that's just what we're known as, the wool brokers.
Okay. Great. So you, and by the way, if anyone wants to see a video about how the sorting is done, Ollie has done one, and that's already available on the Jamieson and Smith YouTube channel.
So we have, tomorrow, the video we're putting up is me going through all the yarn ranges from one ply to chunky, so just a breakdown of everything. And then we also have a video with Hazel Tyndall knitting a Fair Isle bookmark, and then Alison Randall doing fair cuffs and fingers.
Brilliant. Yes, so I had that class with her last year. That's a great class. Yeah, that's exciting. So you work here, but you also are a designer. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan. I'm a fangirl. Because I think that you have a talent for taking the traditional and putting a modern twist on it.
Yeah.
So like the Hap cowl, which is like a plain knit, and then it has the Hap lace around it. And then you have the Maddie yoke, which I think was last year's annual, where the yoke is inspired by the Tabit rugs. And then there's I'm so horrible, I have a cheat sheet here because I'm really bad at remembering names.
So I the worst part about designing is coming up with the names.
Well, that's the hardest thing about podcasting is naming each episode. Yeah. What do you call these things? The Maury and House.
Oh yeah.
So the Maury and House, you have, I see it as sort of like mid-sized patterns. You think about the period patterns, you think about the larger OXO, the OXO patterns, but on the Maury and the House, you've gone sort of more graphic and mid-sized.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Croft Hoose beanie, which I would argue is like a squared off version of the OXO pattern.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. So I'm always curious with designers who are sort of like breaking the mold a little bit, are these things like conscientious decisions that you're making? Like, hey, I want to stretch the boundaries a little, or is it just that you are so well versed in Fair Isle and Fair Isle tradition that as you are knitting something that appeals to you, you're sort of using the tools that you've picked up from Fair Isle?
I think, to be honest, because I buy a lot of vintage knitwear. Not even, like, I have always bought secondhand clothes for years and everything. Mm-hmm. And so when I kind of started getting into knitting, I mean, I had no knitwear. I mean, like, 10, 15 years ago, I had no knitwear at all. And I as I was getting interested in textiles, I would start seeing these kind of Shetland things in charity shops and buying them, and then I started looking on eBay and then Etsy and then How Depop and places like that. And I just collect it. So quite often, I never copy something that I buy, because to me that's not fair on the person who made it, because they didn't make it for it to be copied. They probably made it for themselves or for someone or whatever. So I would never do that. But sometimes I take certainly colour inspiration. And sometimes, like a motif, I'm just like, I kind of isolate the one element of it and take it out from there. But yeah, so I think it really comes from that. I just have and now I have so much. It's disgusting. It's horrible. It's like, I absolutely, like, if I die, it will because I will be killed by a
pillow first.
And I go through phases. Like, I went through like a big Icelandic phase, and I started collecting Icelandic things, and then I went through a big Croatian phase, and I started collecting loads of it. So I have and I have lace stuff, and even just everything. And yeah, I just kind of take it. But things like like even now, like the craft house stuff is probably the most like where I've really made a motif.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a lot of times now in my design I'm taken from traditional motifs and things like that. Yeah, like I kind of do it that way. But the craft houses were like very much I was making something look like something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't do that so much now, but that was to make it. And even like the craft house motif itself is not really ideal for female because there's one row that's quite a lot. You're carrying quite a lot of stitches, and people don't like that. And things like that. So
okay. That one was a fun one to knit. I enjoyed that one. The crown on that one is amazing. It ends up looking like a spider web.
Yeah, which honestly, like I think that as well. Like especially designing crowns, honestly, it's a surprise. As you're like you design the crown and it looks like nothing, it's just like this wedge.
Yeah.
And then when you're knitting it, you're like, oh my wow. And you're like,
look at how good I am.
That was I remember someone being like, oh, it's like a spider's web like in an old abandoned craft house, and I was like, yeah, sure.
That's
yeah,
exactly
that's totally
I was like, you're going for.
Yeah. I was like, it's really not that deep, but
So you have another gorgeous pattern in this year's annual.
Oh yes,
the Radiant Star Cowl. Do you want to talk about the inspiration for that one?
Yeah, so it was really inspired by just kind of traditional all over jumpers. That was the kind of one thing that I saw that growing up to me. It was like that you saw men wearing these really bright kind of almost garish, but in a good way to me. Really bright, just all over jumpers that people would usually make on knitting machines, and yeah, that was kind of where I got the kind of idea. And to me, like knitting an all over jumper, that's a big undertaking again. So that was I kind of thought, right, how can I do a cowl that's not just one single layer, because I always think they can they look great when people hold them up,
flop,
but then it's like
yeah.
So I thought, okay, so how can I do this so I did you knit it the outside on one size needle and then you go down a size and then do the inside on that, so it kind of it goes into a funnel shape without you haven't done any shape in it, and you cast it on provisionally and then you graft the two ends together. That's it. Yeah. So it's so easy. Yeah.
And again, the colors are amazing.
Well, that's sometimes I think if you have something that's like a very bright pattern, very bright colours, you don't need to be complicated about what it's being designed. Yeah.
So you have been patron of Shetland Wool Week.
Yes.
How does that happen?
Well, like now I can hardly even remember. It feels like it was so long ago. So it would have been, it was the 2016, the year after Donna, like in the bubble hat was like viral. So
yeah, no pressure.
But I don't think I really did at the time. But now I'm like, you can't. It's only 4 or 5 years later. I think when you're a bit younger, you're just a bit braver, or things you don't think about things as much. Yeah, now I think I wouldn't. And then at that time, the only hats had been Hazel and Donna.
Okay, so
it was only
it
was quite a new thing. It wasn't as kind of big as it is now. So I think that was, I can't remember. So somebody said to me, they were thinking about, because you have to they put people forward. So there's a, what do you call it, like a board almost, trustee kind of thing. And they'll suggest people and then they'll kind of vote on it or whatever. And they said, they were going to put you forward. Would it be something you'd be interested in doing? And I was like, whatever, not really thinking much about it. And then they were like, then it was. And then you have, Wool Week is in September, but they announced the pattern. Usually they did it at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which was in March. So really from, you kind of were told, I think it must have been like November or December. Everything seemed so far away that it didn't seem like it was going to be a big thing.
Yeah, you think it's months.
Yeah.
Months and months.
And so I remember I was like, what am I going to do? And then at that time I was making a lot of my crotchless cushions. I used to make them the whole time. So really that was what I was known for at that time. And I had done, we have a big craft fair in Shetland at the end of November, and for a couple of years I'd been town, so I was known for doing the craft exhibition, so that was kind of where I was just like, I'm just going to do that.
Okay, so you knew ahead of time that you were being considered.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like a bolt out of the blue.
No, and then because people that I work with go to the meetings, so the one that they voted on it, then they came back and told me.
And they told you.
Yeah,
okay,
so it wasn't really like that much of a surprise. But yeah, so it was, I mean, it's like that's a nice thing to be asked to do, I suppose. Yeah. And I think,
So you have to design the hat.
Yes.
What else is involved with being the patron?
Well, I think even now they ask for you to do more things, but really at that time all you had to do was you did the pattern and you had to teach a few classes that whole week or do a talk. So I did a talk.
Either or?
I think I did do both, but I think I was like, I would rather do a talk because I don't do teaching. I really don't. I have never really done teaching and don't think there's anything I do really that technique-wise, I'm probably one of the most inefficient. Like I'm not like known for my skills in that department. So I did a talk and a couple of classes about taking inspiration from vintage knitwear. Because I do quite a lot of talks in the summer, like when we have tour groups and stuff, like we did last other years. But
it's a weird year.
Yeah, so I quite often I do talks about my vintage collection. So that I find that kind of thing much easier and more naturally than teaching.
Yeah, I understand that. I am a trained teacher.
Okay.
I homeschooled my own children.
Okay.
But the thought of teaching a knitting class, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do that.
No, it's just,
I'd rather talk about it, to be honest. So there are so many talented people up here in the knitting community. If you had to pick some patrons, do you have any thoughts on future patrons?
I don't know, and there's so many of the people who have done it it's quite, like, and I'm not including myself, but like, it's quite top tier. I don't know, every year I'm like, who are they going to choose? And then they choose someone, I'm like, that's the person. Yeah. I mean, I was really happy when Oliver was patron last year. Like, I think Kevin Van was good as well, and he's just worked for so long in the industry that I think it was.
Well, and I think he brought something really interesting to the experience last year, being able to talk about the wool.
Yeah.
And
it was more,
wool
kind of first.
so unique. Yeah. Rather than knitting itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, honestly, I don't, there's so many, people, but, and then I think as well, Shetlanders were quite shy as a kind of general rule. We're quite, quite Scandinavian in our kind of way, like we're not very like out there. So I think it's quite hard sometimes to pick people out because it's more about who would do it.
Yeah.
Would they kind of be willing to do it? Yeah. There's a lot of people who should do it, but would probably say no.
Interesting.
But I do, honestly, I do think now I don't know if I would say it.
Is that because
I think I'm getting more shy. I'm more like
Shetland seeping into the bones now.
Yeah, because I think when I was younger, I was just like, sure. I didn't understand what a big thing it was, but also it wasn't such a big thing then. I think for sure because the event has grown.
Year on year, it's gotten larger and larger.
Yeah.
And if you want to come next year, you need to book your accommodation now. Yeah, that's how big it is.
Because I mean, I have seen it from basically the second year of it was when I started working here, and so we didn't have an opening ceremony, we just had a closing ceremony, and that was just really for people who had worked at it.
Oh,
it was like a private thing, for all the people, and those were pretty wild back in the day. I was quite young, so I was like, And you have to come and work on Saturday, and when you're young, you can like work with a hangover. Can't really do that sometimes. But yeah, so it used to be it was such a small thing, and I mind. So the first opening ceremony they had, that would have been the year that Donna was the patron, and that was in Clickaman, the leisure centre here. I know it's weird, but we don't have many places to have events, but I think they had for Hazel, her opening ceremony, they did that. No, that was the first year, and that was in Mariel in a room. So that was like quite small, and then the next year Donna was in Clickaman, and it was bigger. My year was in Clickaman, it was bigger, but honestly, I can't even remember. I need to do a speech, right? The opening ceremony.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I said because I just blanked out. I remember I wrote this thing and I went up there and I didn't wear my glasses because if I don't wear my glasses then I couldn't really see people. Yeah. All I could see was the people that I work with, Derek and other people were at the very front, and I was I'm just not looking at them, I'm looking past them, and then you just see all these people wearing your hats, and it's just and then I think as well because I was other people, they can maybe go around a lot more. I mean, we are working the whole week, so because people are in the shop buying all the time. And
so you were working in the shop as you were patron. Yeah.
Which I think was funny because you kind of get a bit as well. People didn't realize who you were, and maybe
I'm the patron.
Yeah, maybe didn't treat you so until they realised who you were. So that's quite funny. Yeah, it's just like a shop girl, masqueraded as. Yeah.
So it's a knitting Cinderella story.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so it was crazy. Just people wearing your hat.
Yeah.
And I still see them everywhere. It's so funny. People in Shetland, obviously, and then you get people people in my family, they want to wear one and have one, and I don't think I've ever really worn my ones. So that just seems a bit too. I'm really bad for that. All my designs, I make my designs. I have these lovely samples, and then I have them all packed away, and I hardly ever wear them.
Wow. And then people all over the world are wearing them instead.
And I have them all packed away. It's funny.
It's just a piece of history.
Sometimes I think as well, as much as I say I'm not so much of I am more of a process knitter, I think, than a project knitter, but more so the designing side of it. I kind of get really into that side of it, do all that, and then I make it, and then it's kind of I'm done with it, and then I kind of pack it away.
Yeah.
But I don't really give it away because I'm not I'm quite selfish in that way. I don't make things.
You're adding to your collection.
I am just adding to my
You're going to have your own textile museum.
Wow.
The Allegria Textile Museum.
Yeah, or I just have to, if I become very poor, I'm just going to have to sell. I do have clearouts every now and again, and I do sell a lot of stuff. Because otherwise it's just, and then also I have become so much more picky as time goes on, and as I learn more about knitting, then I don't quite come up to my standards anymore.
So, you must leave the collection.
So when I go to the charity shop sometimes, and then they always laugh and they're like, "Oh, you're not taking that one. You're getting picky." And I'm like,
Not this time.
Not this time. Sometimes I say if it's still here next week, then I'll maybe buy it.
So is there anything that you see when you see it in the charity shop that you buy it? Is there a certain style or a certain color or something?
Well, honestly, I can't say. Unless it's something really different, not like anything else I have, then I'll definitely buy it. Or if something's really old and it's not really, really expensive, because sometimes you get lucky and you find something in it. I can tell it's really old, but maybe not told, can't tell how
the
old
shop
it is.
doesn't know what they have.
Although they are quite clever now, they do price things, I would say, accordingly. So, but one time I got something off Etsy, which I think is the oldest piece that I have, and it's it's just a very plain fawn jumper with ferrule at the bottom. It's at the bottom band and on the cuffs, and it has a moss stitch edging, and it's a V neck. Interesting. And I think it's probably like 1920s, 1930s.
Wow.
And I think I got it for £8. But that's
that's amazing.
Yeah, like even at the time I was like, from the pictures I was like, and I've been caught out loads of times, something looks amazing in the picture and it comes and it's not. Yeah. And so, but the other way around as well, like things look.
Well, and you've altered things before that you've done too.
I do that a lot with yoke jumpers, because traditionally they come up very high, and have quite a deep rib, and I just take the neck off and redo the neck. Mm-hmm. I don't touch anything else really, but that to me, I am mainly some things I do buy for the collection,
right?
But a lot of things I am buying to wear them, so.
And that's one of the great things about buying real wool, 100% wool, is you can cut it up, you can put it back on the needles and do to it what you want. Like, it's not going to completely disintegrate.
Yeah, like this cardigan, which honestly, it's just a plain machine knit lace cardigan. Mm-hmm. This is probably the most worn thing I have, and I think it cost me £1.25.
Oh goodness.
And it had no buttons on it. I had like 2 buttons, and I just put buttons on it, and I wear it the whole time.
That's great.
But then I have, just so many. Honestly, sometimes I'm looking through stuff and I'm like, I don't even remember buying that. I'm like, I don't even. Sometimes like I buy it and I'm like, oh yeah, and then I don't see it again for 2 years. I'm like,
I feel like with a lot of knitters, that's how their yarn stash is.
Well, I'm like that too with yarn as well.
Yeah, you start going through things. Where can I get this? And
the worst though is when you buy stuff and it's something you already have that you're like, I've done that before.
I've done that with Jamieson and Smith colors actually.
See, I got lucky because when I was making a lot of my cushions, I bought pretty much over time, probably a cone of everything.
Wow.
And then I also have probably at least one ball of everything as well. And then you see sometimes in the charity shops as well, or like vintage wool. And I know the colour because I know the colours. Because at that time they didn't have ball bands on, they're just in the little hands.
They're just there,
or they'll be wound into balls. And I'm like, that's $1.24. Something like that. Just to add to the stash. Yeah.
That is something I do, try and do when I come to Wool Week, is try and get here a few days before everyone else and cruise the charity shops.
Yeah.
And last year I did really well. This year not so much.
No, but then I think just coronavirus. There's people have been having big clear outs and stuff, but charity shops are not all open yet. And one of them's gone. Save the Children is gone.
Yeah, on Commerce Street. Yeah. But last year I got big bags, about this big, full of remnants, remnant wool, which is great for experimenting with. And I got a lot of needles. Straight needles.
Mm-hmm. Long double pointed needles. Yeah.
And I learned my lesson about buying a Fair Isle jumper when you see it. Yeah. Because it will not last long. I'm pretty sure Ella got there last time before I got back and got the one I saw.
No, I don't. It wasn't Wool Week then, no, because I wouldn't have been.
You'd been busy. Yeah.
But it's funny. They do, and I think I like buying vintage stuff as well because it's got a bit of this kind of life before you got to it, and you'd love to know. I've got 1 or 2 things that I kind of know about them. One of them I got a jumper, and then a lady came to, I think it was my talk at Wool Week, and she came down up to me after and she was like, I think that's my jumper. Because she had it, and then she put it to the church up.
Oh wow. And then you found it.
So she was like, I'm pretty sure that's right. She was like, I need to see if I can find a photo of me wearing that. So I posted things like that. That's the other thing, is you also don't know anything about it. Yeah. When you get it. So you kind of just imagine. I mean, I have one thing that's like, it was over 2 weeks. 1 week I got this, it was a man's all over jumper. And I bought that, and then the next week there was a women's all over cardigan. It was different patterns, It was the exact same colours, except the women's one had maybe a couple more colours in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it had to have been like a husband and wife.
Yeah.
Like, it just had to have been. So I just keep them together. My collection was just like next to each other. But like, I would love to know.
Yeah, that would be so neat to have that. Yeah, and it's interesting. I totally agree with you, and I know there's people who are looking into ways to mark clothing so that it can be sort of tracked on the internet. You know, people who are encouraging like charity shop purchasing and reusing clothing and stuff, you know, to have language. Yeah.
But I know there's people like Hazel Tyndall. She, quite a lot of her motifs, she made them, and she has kind of windmill ones and stuff like that. And I think it's either the Anne Fidelson Art of Fair Knitting one. Okay. She has a pattern in that, and it's based on a jumper that was in the charity shop, and like it was one of Hazel's jumper, because she was the only person that did that. And I think I'm interested, like, because she made a lot of yokes and things when she was young, and you never got any choice when you were making for companies to sell. You didn't get any choice in the colours of the patterns.
Right.
So then she would like make her own patterns up. And yeah, that's the only way really, like, for you to be totally unique in what you're doing. Whereas quite a lot of, we're all kind of taken from a lot of the same motifs, but there's like a reason why they all work.
Right.
And the reason why they've kind of survived.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you make note of that, because every now and then there's sort of a hubbub where people see someone come out with a new Fair Isle design and they get very grouchy, thinking that the designer stole it from another designer. But there are so many motifs that are sort of the established motifs of Fair Isle. Yeah. You know, so it's, but then there are people who are creating new motifs too. So it's like, you have to be careful, but at the same time, there are a lot of, you know, there's stitch dictionaries and things that are, you know, 200 Fair Isle motifs, 300 Fair Isle motifs.
What Shetlanders have used for centuries.
They've been down. Yeah.
And kind of the best ones have survived.
Right.
So the kind of ones that they have is there's a reason why that's.
Reason. Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's all about how you put it together, how you combine the motifs and the colours, and that's what makes it different.
Right. Yeah. I could continue with you all day, but I have actually taken you away from work in order to get here. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So before I let you go though, just one more time, if you'd like to go through and let people know what's coming up for Virtual Wool Week on the Jamieson and Smith YouTube channel.
Yeah, so we have every day multiple videos. We've got a lot of videos from the Campaign for Wool, so they're a big supporter of ours, and they've provided us with lots of interesting videos. And then we also have videos kind of explaining what happens to our wool once it leaves Shetland. On different days it goes through a different process of scouring and the dyeing and all that before it comes back here. And then we ourselves have a video every day this week going up. And we're just trying to involve people in Shetland as you can. And there's so much stuff. Wool Week themselves have got a lot of stuff coming out. So I think definitely we're all so sad that it couldn't go ahead as it was, but I think the way the world is at the moment, this is the best we can do, and it's pretty good. Yeah, and I think not ideal, no, but I think probably an overall positive, because so many more people are going to get the taste of what Wool Week is like, and have some of that experience, and then who knows, maybe next year. Off the hook. I don't know what next year's going to be like, but it's good. Before I go, why don't you let people know where they can learn more about you online? So you can go on my Instagram is Allegria Designs, and I have a blog which I don't update that much these days, but I am trying to be better. Which is just if you search for Allegria blog or Allegria Designs. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me.
It was a real pleasure to get to speak with Ella Gordon. Her passion for preserving Fair Isle is admirable, and I have been a fan of her design work for several years now. I'll be sure to put links to her Ravelry and Instagram and such in the show notes for you. In the meantime, I hope you join in with the festival coming up on the 9th, and I will see you again here on the podcast once that's all over. Thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IthoughtIKnewHow to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website IthoughtIKnewHow.familypodcasts.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you are on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Thank you ever so much to my patrons, Knit New Haven and Morehouse Farm, for sponsoring the podcast. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on Ravelry and Facebook are both called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.